Okay, tonight is Halacha and Tanya. By the way, I do want to mention one thing. I'm going to hope to remember to announce it later. The next 2 Wednesdays, there's not going to be a Zoom class. Next Monday, yes, but next Wednesday and the following Wednesday, there's no class. And yeah, the Zoom class this Monday, there will be a Zoom class, and next Monday not. Okay, anyway, the next thing we're holding in, so to speak, the halachas between person to person. The Gemara says there's a responsibility to judge everybody favorably. Havei done is kol ha'adam l'kav schus. It says in Pirkei in many different places. Now it also says in the Gemara, if somebody suspects a kosher person of doing something which is not kosher, so to speak, not appropriate, he gets malchus in his body, meaning Hashem punishes him. Generally speaking, a person needs to find good in everybody. A person that finds bad in other people, and this is interesting, it's brought down in halacha from the Baal Shem Tov. We know in Chassidus, the Rebbe brings it down many, many times. But even in halachas for them, they bring down that the Baal Shem Tov said that another Jew is a mirror. That when you look at another Jew and you see a fault in another Jew, so that means you have that same fault. And therefore, the Baal Shem Tov said, the way they bring it down in halacha, that when you see a fault in somebody else, Hashem will judge you with that same fault that you have. So in other words, it's very interesting. We learned this many times. Hashem works, Hashem reacts based on the way we act. Okay? What's going on upstairs is dependent on us. That means when we look at a Jew favorably, Hashem looks at us favorably. When we look at a Jew unfavorably, then Hashem does not look at us favorably. By the way, I missed a very important thing I want to mention. Tonight's class is for a total of 4 shlema for David ben Hadassah, who needs a big refor shlema, and they wish to should help in the schus of the class. He'll be well. He should be very well, back to normal. Okay, so therefore, when you find fault in somebody else, it's just as a business investment, it doesn't pay. Because if you see a fault in somebody else, Hashem is going to judge you negatively also. If we find good in somebody else, Hashem will judge us good. So therefore, as the poskim write in halacha, by finding a schus in somebody else, Hashem is finding a schus in us. We don't find something good about somebody else, we find something negative. So then Hashem finds something negative about us. Okay? Therefore, if you suspect, there's a din in halacha, if you suspect a person incorrectly that they're doing something wrong, you have to ask him mechila. If you accuse him of doing something wrong, you need to ask him forgiveness and give him a bracha. Because it's not a good thing to suspect other people. There's a pasuk that says, and we discussed this in many different dinim, the pasuk says in Chumash, V'yisem nikiyim me'Hashem u'miyisrael. You have to be clean from a Jew and from God. But also from a Jew. You need to be clean. In other words, we're not supposed to do things that somebody could suspect us of doing something wrong, and we learned those halachas already. But the same thing, when you look at somebody else, you should always see good in that person. And you should know, good people always see good in other people. Bad people always see faults in other people, because that's their nature. Okay, next. Another din in halacha of between, it's called ben adam lechaveda, the respect that a person supposed to have between man to man. It says like this: you're supposed to have what's called kavod abrius. You have to have respect for the dignity of somebody else. That includes, by the way, not embarrassing somebody, but generally speaking, it says in halacha, you have to honor everybody. No matter who the person is, you need to honor them. For instance, if they're rich people that give tzedakah, even if they're ignorant in Torah learning, You have to honor them because they support Torah. A person is not as learned as you, but they have good midas, or they serve Hashem with more sincerity. So you have to praise them for what they are. We always have to respect the dignity of human people. We mentioned in the past, it's a remarkable story. There was somebody once came to the Rebbe. I remember the situation when I was a Bach in 1970. There was a person, a boy that came to the Rebbe, and his face was completely deformed. He couldn't hear, he couldn't see. He was, not to use it, I don't mean nasty, he was a basket case. Everybody, the kids that looked at him got scared. I mean, everybody would go away. People used to stare at him. It was a very bad scene. And he once came to the Rebbe for Mincha during the week. Now, when the Chazan was repeating the Shemon Esrei, the Rebbe would sit at the table with his hand over his eyes, looking into the siddur, following the Chazan's repetition. That day, always, the Rebbe always looked like this. He looked down in the siddur, and he didn't look up. The day that person was there, when the Rebbe was following the repetition of the Amidah, the Rebbe did not cover his eyes. Why? That nobody should think, even people every day they're there, but nobody should think that the Rebbe, God forbid, doesn't want to look at this person. Nobody should think. The Rebbe doesn't even want to give a slight impression. He changed what he did every day, not to give the person or anybody the impression that he doesn't want to look at the person. So we need to have respect, and there's a lot of laws in Torah, by the way, that the Torah permits things because of human dignity. Sometimes it even pushes also negative mitzvah, sometimes. So we need to have respect and dignity of everybody. Even a person is completely nothing, but they are still a creation of Hashem. Ma'aseh Yodeh his power, as the pasuk says. Every Jew is a work of God's hand. And if every Jew is a work of God's hand, then every Jew needs to be respected just from the mere fact that he is a Hashem's child. That's it. Next thing is like this. There is a negative commandment in the Torah of hurting somebody verbally. Verbally. We know all the therapists will tell you that verbal abuse is worse many times than physical abuse. Verbal abuse can go very deeply into the person. Years ago, we grew up as kids, we used to say, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me. That's not true. Now they find out that names can hurt a person more than sticks and stones. And it's something that people have to be extremely careful. And number one, you're transgressing one negative commandment. Another negative commandment. If you embarrass somebody publicly, it says you have no chelik in olam haba. You go to Gehenna, and you don't go out of it. And you have no share in the world to come. So people have to be very careful never to hurt anybody verbally, especially spouses, especially it says widows, orphans, or in Shulchan Aruch it says, generally speaking, a husband has to be super careful with not saying nasty things to the wife because she gets emotional and Hashem listens to the prayers. So a person has to be extremely careful not to embarrass somebody, not to hurt somebody with words. You're not allowed to call somebody a name that they don't like, even if they're used to it already. But if it's a name they don't like, you're not allowed to call them that name. One of the 10 Commandments is everything that he owns. You're not supposed to lust something that your friend has. So what does that mean? You have something, I can't want it. That's not what it means. The Gemara explains there's two there's two in the Ten Commandments. There's what's called leisisave, you shouldn't desire, and leisachmed, you shouldn't also desire. So the Gemara says, what's the difference between the two? If I see something in your house that I like, and I scheme in my mind how I can get it away from you, not stealing it, that you sell it to me. But I work in my mind to get it away from you because I want it. That's transgressing the negative commandment in the Aseres Hadibris and the Ten Commandments that you shouldn't lust what your friend has. Leisachmaid is when you take it a step further. Leisachmaid is, I come to you, I don't steal it. I force you to sell it to me, but I give you money. You don't want to sell it to me. You don't want to sell it. But I make you so crazy, and even giving money, leisachmed means with money. So if I just desire and I figure out ways of getting it, now the sin is not that I can't, oh, it's a beautiful picture, I would like such a picture too. That's not leisisava. Leisisava means I figure out, because I like it, how I can get it away from you. Leisachmed is when you take it to step 2, and I force you to take money to be able to sell me the picture. So those two things are actually part of the Aseres Hadibris. Next in, which is also in having good midas, is what's called Tsar Bali Chayim, the torture of animals. Okay? And there's an argument in the Gemara if it's biblical or rabbinic. And the halacha is, now the Rebbe and others rule in Shulchan Aruch, that torturing animals is biblically forbidden. Is biblically forbidden. We know that if somebody owns an animal, halachically you need to feed them before you feed yourself. According to Torah, anything that causes pain to an animal is biblically forbidden. For instance, bullfights, rodeos, all those types of animal things that cause actually animals to suffer is biblically forbidden. If somebody sees an animal suffering and they're able to do something about it, they have a biblical obligation to do it. And therefore we learn also, it says, Hashem lakol, Hashem is good to everybody. V'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Hashem is merciful and every creation that he made. Every creature that Hashem made, he has pity. So we need to learn from Hashem to be one of the, what's called Rachmanim, which is one of the attributes that a Jew has, that they have mercy on everybody, even on animals. Just to take an animal, like sometimes, sometimes kids, they don't know yet. They take a fly and a butterfly and they start, torturing it, basically. You're not allowed to do that. If somebody owns a dog, they're not allowed to torture the dog just for the fun of it, to make it crazy. That's all biblically forbidden. And people have to be very careful.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? What about insects? Like if they're pests or insects?
Now, the din is like this. An insect that bothers you, you are allowed to kill. If it's not bothering you just to walk in the street and step on the bugs, you're obviously not allowed to. If you find a bug in your house, halachically you're allowed to kill it. That's not a problem. 1 second, you're allowed to kill it. If it's an insect or an animal, for that matter, that's dangerous, then you're allowed to kill it, even if it's not bothering you, because it might hurt somebody else, like a bee or a wasp or something like that. So the din is, if they're bothering you, you're allowed to kill them, but you're not allowed to kill an animal for no reason at all. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid brings down in the Sefer Chassidim that, sometimes people walk by, taking a walk in the street, and it's not Shabbos. So they walk by a bush, they'll rip off a little leaf. They'll rip off a leaf just for no particular reason. It's not a flower they want to take home. They like the flower. They just walk by and rip off a leaf from a bush. It says you're not allowed to do that. Why? It's a living creature of Hashem. Why are you destroying it for no reason? You want to cut flowers to decorate your house? Yeah, that's why flowers were created. You want to eat meat? You're allowed to shecht it. You're allowed to shecht it properly and eat it because, yeah, that's the purpose of meat. You elevate it to become a human state. But just to torture an animal for no reason at all is not allowed. And
Rabbi,
there's a big question. One second. There's a big question. There's a big question in halacha of hunting for sport. Just for sport. It's not so simple that you're allowed to do it. There's a whole argument in halacha. Yes, ma'am.
Rabbi Shusterman, what
I
about
have
like
one.
a person has a pet, let's say a pet bunny, and they keep it in a cage all day, or pet birds and they keep them in a cage all day? Is that Sar Balachayim?
No, because they're not suffering by it.
Huh.
And also, you don't want them to run all around the house. I mean,
I have a question. You know those elephants that you take to train, and they tie, as a baby, they tie him up, and the elephant learns only take 3 steps and it goes back, and then finally he's trained that he cannot run away, and then he does. That's it. What would that be? And also circus animals.
well, circus animals could be a question in halacha if they're being tortured. I'll give you another issue where this is involved. There's a whole movement today of animal rights that are against experimentation on animals in the medicinal world, medicine, right? So there are many, groups that are saying you're not allowed to, it's torture to the animals, you're not allowed to experiment on animals because you're torturing the animals. That's completely against Torah, by the way. As much as Torah says biblically you can't torture an animal, and even when you use animals for experiments, you're not allowed to torture the animals. You're not allowed to torture the animals, but you're allowed to do things to them to learn to save human life. In other words, it's a fine line, but you're not allowed to use them to just torture them. But if you're killing them or you're doing it for the sake of experimentation to create medicine, vaccines, or whatever for humans, then you're allowed. Then it's a mitzvah. That's why they were created. So it's a very fine line. But anytime you torture an animal, it's biblically forbidden. And people have to be very careful with that. Okay, next. Jealousy. Very bad trait. Jealousy is called kina. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, hakina, v'akaved, v'taiva, 3 things: jealousy, seeking honor, and taiva kaved, and desires, lusts, destroy a person from the world. In fact, the Rebbe Rashab writes in Hecholzum, one of his famous extended Maimorim, he writes over there a one-liner. He says, "Sina machmas kina ein la takana." Hatred that comes from jealousy can never be rectified. And he explains how bad jealousy is. What's the issue? The issue is very simple. Let's say you keep bothering me, okay? And because of that, I don't like you. So when you stop bothering me, I'm going to start liking you again. When the cause goes away, the effect goes away, right? But jealousy, it says in Chassidus, is extremely deeply rooted. It's really deeply rooted in the person. That even if the person, let's say, loses his money, loses whatever it is, you're still going to be jealous. Jealousy is a trait of not tolerating and not being happy for somebody else. And that will never end. And that, the Rebbe Rashab writes in Chassidus, that it's one of the most, maybe the most, the hardest midah to be able to rectify. Because jealousy is very deeply rooted in the person. And it's a very bad thing. The opposite of that, by the way, is another very important thing, and that's called Hakara Satay. Hakara Satay means basically recognizing the good and kindness that somebody did for you. We find that in the mitzvah in the Torah and Parshas Kisavai, there's a mitzvah of bringing the first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, right? They're called bikurim. And Rashi says, what do you do when you bring bikurim? Rashi goes in the Mishnah and the Gemara, that what? You said, I thank God for all the things that he gave me, and here I'm giving him the fruit to show my thanks and appreciation. It was interesting. The Rebbe, when the Rebbe's mother, oh, by the way, yesterday was the Rebbe's mother's birthday, Chav Ches Adar, 28th of Adar. When the Rebbe's mother was leaving Russia, she was by herself. The Rebbe was already in France and Italy and America. When she was leaving Russia, there were Chassidim that actually helped her. There were Chassidim that would schlep her suitcases. She was a woman, There are Chassidim that schlepped her suitcases. There are Chassidim that helped her out. There are Chassidim that when the Rebbe's father was in Golus, in Almatah, in all those places, there were Chassidim that would help the Rebbe's father. I saw it myself. Those people that did anything good to the Rebbe's father and mother, the Rebbe showed them unique appreciation for their entire life. The Rebbe never forgot the good they did to his parents. The problem is in human nature, when somebody does something bad for you, you remember it for life. The good somebody does for you, 10 minutes later, you forget it. And what we're learning here today in Halacha, it has to be the reverse. Something bad that somebody does for you, you should forgive them and forget it. Forgive and forget. What the good somebody does for you, then you have to remember that forever. And repay the kindness as much as possible. What?
Hashem doesn't do that. Hashem did not forgive us for Eitz Hadas. Hashem did not forgive us for the Egel. Hashem holds a grudge forever. And we're getting punished every day for it. And it's not fair.
But let me tell you something. First of all, life is not fair.
No, but you practice what you preach. Hashem, look what you just said.
Okay. If Hashem would really hold a grudge, not one person on this class would be alive today.
I get it. Okay.
Not one person in the country or the universe in every generation. None of us would be alive. Okay. Now, there are certain major sins that brought a level of impurity to the entire world.
Right. Okay.
It's not that Hashem doesn't forgive and forget. Hashem forgot and forgave the Egel. Hashem says, just don't keep doing things that are going to reawaken it. That's what Hashem says. When a Jew sins, they're going to reawaken that Egel that was so bad. At that moment, Hashem should have destroyed the entire nation. Okay? So yeah, he holds a grudge, but we're here. You want us not to be here and he shouldn't hold a grudge. That's not the way Hashem works. Hashem is on the contrary. When Hashem teaches us, you want to hold a grudge against somebody? Fine. But sustain them, give them life, give them everything they have, and hold a grudge. That's okay. As long as you give them what they need. That's what Hashem does. And that's what we need to learn also. You're upset with somebody? Listen, what's the biggest analogy? People are sometimes upset with their kids. Therefore, they don't give them food to eat. They don't give them clothes to wear. Of course they do. So this is things that we need to understand, from Hashem. But Hashem says, you want to hold a grudge always against somebody else, then I'll hold a grudge against you too. That's the way Hashem works. Okay, we need to, even if somebody does a favor, you have to repay it, and never to pay back evil for good. That's another crazy human nature. Swarm say this. I'm not saying this. They tell there was a great tzaddik when he did somebody a favor, when he used to do somebody a favor, he would send the person little pebbles. When he did the favor, he would send the guy in an envelope or bag, he'd send him a bunch of little pebbles. And somebody was asked him, what are you doing that for? He said, he was a smart man. He said, because normally people repay kindness with evil. So he says, I know I'm doing you a favor. I know you're going to repay me with bad. But at least when you throw stones at me, throw little ones. Don't throw big ones. Throw little stones at least at me. So he would send them little stones to tell the guy, listen, I know most people repay good. And that's, sorry to say, that is human nature. You repay good with bad. Why? Because that's human nature. We have something called the Yetzer Hara. And Torah says the opposite. What does the Alter Rebbe say in Tanya? We're not going to get there today. It says a person has to do chesed with bad people to learn from Yosef and Echad, to learn from Yosef and his brothers. What did the brothers do to him? This is the end of Mamish, the last thing in the 12th parak of Tanya. He says, if somebody does something wrong with you, don't get angry at him. Don't take revenge. On the contrary, somebody that does something bad to you, do something good for you. Now, the Rebbe says in Tanya at the end of Parak Yud Beis. But you know what? This is brought down in Halacha also. Because that's what Yosef, and he says, to learn from Yosef and his brothers. Yosef's brothers threw him into a pit. They wanted to kill him. And how did Yosef treat them? With chesed. He supported them the whole duration of Egypt. So that's a very important. Another interesting halacha is you're not allowed to speak bad about Eretz Yisrael, not even on the stones of the land. And you're not allowed to say, the pasuk can bring down, you're not allowed to say, the Gemara says, that another country is better than Israel. I'm talking about Eretz Yisrael, biblical Eretz Yisrael. You're not allowed to say that speak bad against Eretz Yisrael because it's Hashem's country, it's Hashem's home, right? Hashem is always there from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So when a person speaks bad about Eretz Yisrael, they're speaking bad about Hashem's home. Hashem said, I don't want you speaking bad about my house. And the great Chacham, and the Gemara says this, you see, you find it today, not too much though, but many Gedolim, the Gemara says, they came to Eretz Yisrael, they would bend down and kiss the floor, the stones of Eretz Yisrael. As soon as they landed or got there with the horse and buggy or whatever, they would kiss the earth of Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because they loved it. Why did they love it? Because it's holy. Why is it holy? Because it's Hashem's country that He chose for us. It's the land that Hashem chose for us. And therefore, Eretz Yisrael has to be dealt with properly, in respect, and everything else in a proper fashion.
It's a holy land.
It is a very holy land. I mean, not the way they're behaving there today, but I'm saying the land itself is holy. And that holiness remains forever.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Tanya.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Question. You said you can't hold a grudge, but in the Torah it says don't hate someone in your heart. Is that true? How that's it's.
No, you shouldn't hate somebody in your house. And ideally, by the way, holding a grudge doesn't mean I hate you. But holding a grudge is not good. But what I said before was, if somebody really messed you up and you're upset with them, but you give them everything they need, that's okay. That should be the worst issue. Ideally, you shouldn't hold a grudge either. You should love them, hug them, and kiss them, not corona-wise, but hug them and be very friendly with them, of course.
Thank you. I have a question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Too. When you said they bowed down to the little stones,
No,
I don't get.
They
sit on the ground. They sit on the ground. I don't really get it.
Because the land is holy.
Oh.
when you kiss the Torah or you kiss a holy book. So the land was holy, so they actually bent down to kiss the land. They loved it so much.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
good question. Okay,